It's day 9 of the Stuck at Home Photography Challenge, and we're gonna go back to the beginning. Stay tuned. Hey gang, here we are, day 9 of the Stuck at Home Photography Challenge. I hope all of you are staying healthy. I hope that you are well, and of course, practicing social distancing. Thank you for following along with this challenge. It is now Friday at the end of the second week, and I thought what better time than for us to go back to the beginning of the challenge. So what do I mean by that? Well, not just the fact that I'm sitting here back in the bathroom, I have my EM1 Mark III, I have my scrubby pad. No, I don't mean that way. In fact, you still need to take a picture today. You still need to use your Nifty 50, but I'm not gonna walk you through my shoot. My shot for the day, there it is, right there. If you wanna see the full res, check out my Flickr profile. It is linked in the description below the video. And of course, I'll have these posted on Facebook, so make sure you check things out there. But actually, my challenge for you for today and maybe through the weekend is to go back through the images that you have done during the Stuck at Home challenge so far. And I want you to pick somewhere between 3 to 5 of your photos. Now, these have to be the ones that you prepared, that you did the processing on. You retouched them and said, here's my image, right? And I want you to go all the way back to the raw file in that image. And I want you to reprocess it. And I want you to turn it into a new image. I don't mean just change the color. I mean, change the cropping, maybe flip it, maybe do some other type of Photoshop or Lightroom technique. I'm going to walk you through my choices so that you can see them. Why do I want you to do this? I want you to do it because oftentimes, as photographers, in fact, not often, most of the time, as photographers, we overlook one of the best learning opportunities that we have. What is that opportunity? To look at our bad pictures. We do a shoot, we download everything, we cull through the images, we find a couple that we like, we process them, we put them online, yay, everybody's happy. And then we either just file away or delete the ones that we didn't use. That's the problem. The ones that we didn't use are the ones that hold the most learning opportunity. The ones that we didn't use, if we clear our heads, go through them and ask a simple question. Why? Why don't I like this image? And then, of course, once you have the answer to the why, in your head, solve the problem. What could I have or what should I have done differently to get the result that I wanted? So in an effort to get people thinking that way, I would like you to put your efforts this weekend into reprocessing a few of your images. And yes, you can post them. If you're a member of my Facebook group and you're playing along for the challenge for the consultations, you can post them in the group. I don't want to see 60 different versions of your picture. I want to see just one. And it has to be noticeably different. So you're going to see mine in just a few moments. I'm going to go back to the office. I'm going to walk you through it. Also, one last little announcement here. For next week, I'm going to change things up a little bit. I will tell you in advance. Next week's challenge is black and white. Next week, I am going to try. It's looking like the weather's going to be fairly decent around here. So as long as that holds up, I'm going to try and do a lot of outdoor shooting in my area because I'm fortunate enough I have spots where I can get out and still do social distancing and play around with my camera. But if not, I'll continue to work in the house. But here's the point. Number one, the theme for next week is black and white. Good black and white. But also, in an effort to be able to actually get some other work done, I'm not going to be producing these 30, 40, 50-minute videos from this point forward. I think by now you guys understand the challenge, you understand a lot of my thought process about how I approach things, and you understand how I go about processing these. Now I realize I haven't done a lot of black and white, and some of you would love to see how I do the black and white. So for next week's challenge, the black and white images, I'm going to go out and shoot them. I will take some behind the scenes images of my shooting, some stills. I'm only going to record the post-processing so that you can see how I'm converting these images from color to black and white. And I want to talk to you next week about my thought process when I'm shooting black and white images, because my version of black and white is not just click, it's black and white and it looks cool. Not even close. So we'll get into that. So that being said, for the weekend, you're going to reprocess some images. Next week, black and white, I'll still have videos, but they're going to be mostly the processing part, because my goal, not next week, but the following week, I have a bunch of actual tutorials that I would like to do for you folks. And I would like to get back to doing them. Now, I'll still be shooting a stuck-at-home photography challenge image every day, and I will be posting it online. I will post the results on my Facebook pages, and in the Facebook groups that I'm a member of. I will post the high-resolution versions on Flickr, so you should be following me on Facebook and Flickr, and I'm also going to start posting them all on Instagram, so you should be following me there, and I will include behind-the-scenes images on Instagram, so you can swipe to see the behind-the-scenes shots. That being said, let's head to the office, and let's see what we can do with some of the images that I've shot in the last 2 weeks. All right, gang, so I'm back in the office in front of my computer. These images that you see on the screen here, these are the 4 that I'm going to work on. Now, you may not recognize them as they are here. So just to give you a refresher, this shot, when it was finished the first time, looked like this. This shot, when it was finished the first time, looked like this. This one of the loofah sponge looked like this, and this egg shot looked like this. So remember, the task today is to reprocess these images, but to do it in a way that I'm creating a completely different image that has a completely different look and feel. Now, some images you can take them further than others and you can do more, and I certainly don't mean, cropping down to a tiny little piece of the image or just simply switching from color to black and white. I may make some of these black and white, but we've got to give it just a whole different vibe, right? So as we've been doing, I'm going to dial in my basic settings right away. Clarity at 15, vibrance at 30, saturation at 5, sharpening at 60, and of course, we're going to click off Remove Chromatic Aberration and Enable Profile Corrections. So we've got that part done. Now, first thing I want to do with this back scratcher with all the kind of little needles to it is I'm curious about rotating the images. And like this one, I actually like this feel now. It creates a diagonal line going in a different direction, but certainly that's not enough to create a new image with it. But I am curious if I actually, you know what, let's go back to the develop panel. If I simply start with my color temperature, I don't want to go into the blue direction because that's where we were before. I'm wondering how this might look with yellows or even more greens. The green's kind of interesting because that's kind of almost like a grassy feel. And let's see here. Really just push these colors to the extreme. I'm gonna really pull down those blacks, but I want to really bring the highlights up. So I'm doing everything I can to really create just a ton of contrast here. And then I think what I want to do with this is actually I'm going to leave that right there for the moment. The finishing for this one's going to come in Photoshop. This guy here, I am curious what's going to happen if I go to black and white. So I'm going to switch that over to black and white. Now, notice I just flipped the profile over to Adobe Monochrome, and I have black and white. But traditionally, this right now would be a really bad black and white image. The reason I say that is I subscribe to the Ansel Adams school of thought with black and white images. A good black and white image should have pure black, pure white, and all of the grays in between. So I've got really soft black, I've got a lot of grays, and I have no white in this image at all. Right now, there's no specular highlights, so it may be hard to get a pure white, and sometimes you can't. That's okay, but we'll see what happens here. So the first thing I want to do with this is go ahead and grab that dehaze, and I'm actually not so sure it's the dehaze that I really like. Oh, I love how the texture pops since the car has that metallic paint. So I may try and kind of go in that direction. And Now, same as we did with the other one, I want to rotate this image a couple times and see what happens. When we do that, it's kind of interesting in the sense that suddenly the reflections and the highlights, they kind of don't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to stop there for a moment. I want to move on to this next one. The first thing I'm feeling with this, and again, I think I'm going to rotate here. Yeah, I want to go this direction, and I'm curious about just completely changing up the color scheme to this. Whoops, I'm in luminance there. I want to be in saturation. And should have some cyan. Not really. How about the blues? Yeah, we got a little bit going on with the blues. Purple, of course, we can really kind of push that, as we can the pinks. Now, I want to go to the hues because I want to take the blues more into a purple space. Same with the purples, more into that hot pink magenta. So we're kind of reducing the number of colors in these little spuds here so that we... Okay, and let's come back out here, and now I want to really kind of play with the contrast a little bit. Bring up the shadows just a little bit, pull those blacks way down, and I really want to see the texture. Look, as I pull that slider up, look how the texture starts to really jump out at the end of those. I love that detail, okay? And actually, let's bring the highlights down. If I pull the highlights down, watch the bottom of the image here. I pull those highlights down, I get a lot more detail. Boom, we're gonna leave that one right there. And now this guy, wow. So a couple of things. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna try and rotate him to there, right? The second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna bring the highlights down so we see all of the egg. We got that, right? Now, I am thinking that I'm gonna play, well, that's just extreme, but yeah, it's, you know, it's interesting when you start doing the extreme color. So there's no rule, right? When you're doing the extreme color, you have to realize there is, though, a point kind of no return, a point where what you're doing doesn't actually look attractive anymore. It's completely subjective. So, you know, for me, if I go ahead and I pull those blacks way down, it's like, well, that color is really intense, but it just, I don't know, it's a little too much. So I kind of have to have it somewhere in between. I will admit, I'm just not liking any of that. So let's pull that back out. I want to reset these settings here, and I am curious. I'll try maybe going a little bit more subtle with this just to see what happens. In fact, what if I pull all the blue out and we really make this very monotone? So we're going to lighten everywhere where there was blue. Now we're going to come back here, pull the highlights down just a little bit. I feel like there's maybe a little cyan in there too. Let's see if I was right. Is there any cyan? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, ever so slightly. It may be hard to see in the video, but as I pull that cyan up, we're starting to see a little bit. So I'm going to pull it all out. I want to keep, yeah, no green, okay. I want to keep that paper as monochrome white as I possibly can. And I've got the highlights down. I'm going to bring a little bit more contrast in, and we are going to push the texture way up. And I'm going to work with that right there. So I will say I'm not sure about this image before, and I still need to go into Photoshop, of course, right? So that's going to be a piece of it. So what do we get if we really just play with these colors a lot? No. Let's go into the hues. No, I think we're going to go back to the black and white plan. That was definitely That was the way to go. And we're going to dress this up a little bit in Photoshop. So I may give myself a tough one in this one. I thought for sure this was going to be a kind of a really cool one to play with, but now I'm not so sure. We'll see. So we've got the 4 of them. We're going to go ahead and open up all 4 in Photoshop. All right, so we're going to start with our green stuff here. So what I want to do is I'll start and I'll go ahead and I'll do my dodge and burn layer. And we're going to give it an opacity of somewhere about 40, 43. I'm going to really darken these outside edges. I want just that centerpiece to be kind of the light part of it so that all the attention comes down to there. Good. Even darken the top a little bit, darken the bottom. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all. I'm going to do edit, copy merged so that I'm grabbing everything. And then I'm going to paste a new layer down. And we're going to do filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And I'm going to blur that layer by, let's say about 40-ish, okay? That's pretty much not functional, right? I'm going to put a mask on it. I'm going to go over here, grab a brush, make sure the opacity is set to normal. And for starters, I'm just going to go 50% opacity, and I'm going to make this brush huge and really soft. So we want it to be, that's perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw down that line in the middle. Now I'm going to go a little higher opacity yet, and I'm going to take that brush that's 1400 pixels and I'm going to make it 500 pixels. Whoops, I did not mean to push the image off the screen. There we go. Let's bring that back. Okay. So now I'm going to come down through the middle a little bit more and a little bit more. And now I'm just going to hit in the middle. And now just to make sure that I've got those few pieces. Yep. Okay. Now, this particular layer, I am going to go ahead and do an adjustment on the layer. I'm not making an adjustment layer. I'm going to adjust the layer. I want to grab the levels. I'm going to pull the brightness down a little bit. And I'm going to push the contrast so those tips really jump out more. Okay, but not too much. Boom. And that's where that one's going to stop. I'm done with that one. Okay. Now, the car, not gonna lie, I think the car beat me. I just figured, oh, you know what? This will be a really cool one to switch over to black and white. And I'm not gonna lie, like it's actually, I'm finding it really boring in black and white. I thought maybe taking it upside down. So you know what? I'm gonna cut my losses. We're moving on. This one is done. Don't save it. It's finished. Okay, this guy I'm really liking. So the one thing I am going to do here is we're going to go to a square crop with him. Good. Yeah, it's almost like, you know, like this little flower thing. I'm going to put my dodge and burn layer on there. About 40% opacity on the gradient. And I'm going to pull down those outsides. Just darken them a little bit. Yeah, good. And yeah, I also going to make another layer there. Bring the opacity in the brush down to 11 or so. Darken this bottom just ever so slight, ever so slight. There we go. Yep, and that's that. Okay, cool. And then last but not least, my egg. So the first thing we got to do, we got a little retouching to do here. Got little black spot. Now on the other version of this image, I took out the little spots where you can kind of see the light glowing through it. I'm not going to worry about that this time at all. I'm gonna leave those lights there as part of the image. Good. I need to clean my computer screen because I'm retouching dust spots that aren't going away because they're on my computer screen. And what I do want to do is I want to add a saturation layer, and I'm just going to start by pulling up all the saturation, but I can't go too far. See how it starts to like posterize? You don't want, at least I don't want that to happen. So just ever so subtle, give it a little bit more of a pop. Once again, I want to make sure that I don't have any blues in here. So I'm going to pull that all the way up and nothing shows up. So that's good. Same with cyans. I still feel like there's just a hint of a change there, so I'm going to pull that down. And we'll also add a levels layer here. I'm going to pull this down just a little bit, bring the middle up just a tad, and then from the standpoint of a crop, this is definitely going to be a square crop for me. We're going to go right about there. And the only thing I wish I had, now I suck at drawing, but I would love to be able to get a little bit better definition on this line. And you also notice here, unfortunately, the line's not completely straight. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit liquefy, and I want to straighten that line out ever so slight. I mean, it's barely there, but I like the idea of having the line. So what I want to do, now that I've got that straight, I'm going to go back over here and, whoops, not path selection, sorry. I want to grab the line tool. And we want this line to be pretty small, definitely not 25, probably like 4. We'll start there. How's that? Yeah. And I'm just going to draw a line out there. Now, the challenge with that is it's way too drawn in. It just doesn't look good, right? So I'm going to rasterize that layer. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And we're going to bring it back. Yeah, that's what I want. Right about in there. And then I'm going to lower the opacity ever so slight so that it looks a little bit more real. Good. And we're going to leave that right there. So now we've got our scrub pad. Here is the new version. Here is the previous version. And we've got our loofah sponge, the new version. Here is the previous version. And last, we've got the egg. Here's the new version. And here is our previous version. So there you have it, gang. 3 images reimagined. The 4th image, it was a fail. It didn't work, and that's okay. The point is, take the time, go back through work that you didn't like. And maybe you've deleted all your files that you didn't like along the way. If that's the case, start doing that. But what I want you to do, my challenge for you to do is to take 2 or 3 of the images that you shot in the last 2 weeks or however long you've been doing the Stuck at Home Photography Challenge, and I want you to reprocess them, recreate with them. Step outside your box. Presumably what you did the first time is how you like to do things. So now, explore and find a new way, a different way to do it. So remember, next week, black and white. I'm not going to be posting, here's how I shot it, here's how I processed it videos all week. I'm going to do the shoot, I'll take some behind the scenes pictures, I will include them on Instagram. The video next week is just going to be the processing of the selected images. The following week, I'm going to trim the videos down, but regardless, I am still doing the Stuck at Home Photography Challenge. Make sure you follow me on Facebook. I'm posting on all of my profiles. I'm posting in my Facebook group, which I hope you're a member of. The link is down below. And you'll be able to find the high-res images on Flickr. So keep it up, stay safe, stay healthy, practice your social distancing, and pick up your camera and shoot something. Because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios.